The feisty, tense display between the leaders of the United States and Ukraine at the White House Oval Office yesterday reverberated around the world while leaving doubts about the future relationship between the two strategic partners. US President Donald Trump accused Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky of not being interested in peace, while the wartime leader pushed his counterpart not to side with Russia and to provide a security backstop to any future peace deal. With the heated exchange in front of the world's media also left a much-touted rare earth minerals deal between the two countries in limbo. Here's part of yesterday's Oval Office unfolding.
Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military? And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's exactly what you're doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's backed you far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once?
You think that if you will speak very loudly about the war,
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country is in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
you haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
you
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion. We gave you military equipment, and you men are brave, but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have our military equipment, if you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days. I heard it from Putin. In 3 days. This is something
maybe
new.
Less.
In 2 weeks. Of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this. You're running low on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing. And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
With guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
And for more on this, we're now joined by U.S. correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease joining us from New York. Sherwin, there's a lot of substance I want us to get into, but I have to, for a moment, pause and talk about the absurdity of this. Have you ever in your life thought you would witness something like this? And of course, as a journalist, you sort of have a routine how you cover bilateral engagement between presidents. These are the sort of questions that will be asked. This is the information you're hoping to get access to. And this is how you begin to craft a story and convey that information. But this sort of display threw everybody's playbook out. And you sort of had to ask yourself a minute, what the hell is going on? How do I talk about this in a way that makes sense to people? Just to appeal to your own professional intuition here a little bit, how did you begin to rationalize any of this yesterday as it was unfolding?
Well, you're absolutely right. I had never personally experienced that. I work around a lot of bilateral meetings, and I'll tell you that that is not how it's supposed to go. But what we have witnessed in this process since Donald Trump has become president, Oliver, is that he tends to choreograph whatever he does in front of live television cameras. When he's signing executive orders, he invites the media into the Oval Office and then takes, sort of free wheels and takes questions from the media in those private settings. And he has now amplified that by doing it when heads of state and heads of government are sitting alongside him in the Oval Office. And I think what Volodymyr Zelensky saw here was an opportunity in front of the world's media to state his case and to stand up for his country and for the perspectives that they would want to see in a peace deal. And that, of course, did not go down very well with Donald Trump and J.D. Vance in the Oval Office. You know, this was performative diplomacy. This was kind of real live television, reality television that is misplaced in these kinds of settings. And, you know, this notion, you know, both sort of leaving the accusations about disrespect. Donald Trump saying very on the record there, you've done a lot of talking. I mean, he's talking to the head of state of Ukraine. So people will leave this conversation with their own perspectives on who was disrespectful to who. And we saw a number of President Trump's supporters, including the Republican senator of South Carolina, Lindsey Graham, go out to the media right after that meeting and say something like this. Let's take a look at that clip. Watch.
Complete, utter disaster. I've been to Ukraine 8 or 9 times since the war started. I understand the consequences of Putin's actions against Ukraine. I appreciate what the Ukrainian people have done. They fought like tigers. At the end of the day, I was hoping that this minerals deal, which would be transformative in the relationship, would go over well. I talked to Zelensky this morning. Don't take the bait. President Trump was in a very good mood last night. Somebody asked me, am I embarrassed about Trump? I have never been more proud of the president. I was very proud of J.D. Vance, standing up for our country. We want to be helpful. What I saw in the Oval Office was disrespectful, and I don't know if we can ever do business with Zelensky again.
Now, you hear there's some contradiction, right? He told Zelensky, don't take the bait, which sort of speaks to the notion that you might be set up here, and then talks about how proud he is of the president and J.D. Vance. So a little bit contradictory there, but I'll tell you what has not emerged from that meeting. We do not have a ceasefire plan. We do not have a minerals agreement that has been signed between the United States and Ukraine, and we do not have the security guarantees that Volodymyr Zelensky came to the White House to get. And so we are in, uncharted waters here. And I think the direction we go here will be given to us by the Europeans when they meet in a defense and security summit on March 6th, which is Thursday this week, to really get clarity on how the EU and Europe writ large will be responding here.
Yeah, let's talk about J.D. Vance for a minute, because he made it seem like the belligerence that he displayed towards Zelensky had a little bit more to do than just Zelensky being insistent on guarantees in this deal. 2 things. 1, have you ever said thank you once, accusing him of not being grateful? And 2, showing his cards by saying, and then last year you had the audacity to go out on the campaign trail with the opposition and playing nice with them, but here you're asking us for this. Again, Zelensky showed an appreciation towards Joe Biden and, largely speaking, the Democratic caucus. J.D. Vance seems to be deeply upset about that. Is this more than just about a peace deal and guarantees for Zelensky, for J.D. Vance, as well as for Donald Trump?
J.D. Vance, in many ways, Oliver, has been described in the U.S. media as Donald Trump's attack dog. We saw that, the first iteration of that, when he traveled to represent the United States at the Munich Security Conference a few weeks ago, where in Germany, right, in Germany, that was days ahead of an election, castigated U.S. democracy, EU democracy, European democracy. He had very specific criticisms of how the Germans conduct free speech in their own country. So the argument Europeans could make is that J.D. Vance came to Europe and disrespected us in our own backyard, right? If you're going to use the same playbook here. Look, what doesn't happen in settings when 2 presidents meet is that the vice president or the deputy president inserts themselves in those conversations. Yeah. So I think people that work in the protocol space will have been getting hernias watching that play out, right? You do not engage and tell a head of state that you are disrespecting us when the president, when your principal or superior is sitting right there. So J.D. Vance has a specific role, it seems here, to be the attack dog. I don't know how that will play out behind the scenes, because Donald Trump likes to be the leader of his own show here. But you also saw the Ukrainian president understand that the cameras were rolling there, and for him to capitulate in that moment would not have played well, given that his constituency was also so watching. And so when you have these discussions that play themselves out in front of the live television cameras, you are not then just talking to the people in the room, you are also then looking at how you're coming across to the millions of people watching. And that, I think, is what muddied the waters here. There was a recognition when this thing started to go south that, hey, people are watching me here, I'm going to have to stand up for my country. And of course, you didn't have Volodymyr Zelensky relent in that moment. And that's, I think, where you saw the clash.
Just a last question.
Zelensky has spent a lot of time, Oliver, thanking the American people on social media today. It's actually a tour de force on social media, thanking the Europeans for their support, but also spending a lot of time thanking the President of the United States and the United States writ large for their support here, given the narrative that J.D. Vance has put forward here, that he wasn't thankful in this meeting.
Just a last question here. The day before, Donald Trump had what seemed like an amicable bilateral visit with Keir Starmer, who was in the USA. And just after this engagement, in perfect choreography, European leaders all poured out their messages of support for Ukraine and Zelensky on Twitter. He received it all and said thank you. And I think that was a bit of a slight towards J.D. Vance in that instance. But European leaders are meeting this weekend. How does this engagement change the mood, attitude, and earnestness with which leaders will now be approaching peace and security talks between Ukraine and Russia? And importantly here is the question of Keir Starmer. Will he throw his weight behind Zelensky as well, or will he try to thread what seems like a delicate balance between Trump's interest on the one hand, safeguarding what would be the UK interest on that hand, and safeguarding what is European territorial integrity?
I think the broad takeaway is that Europe is behind Ukraine here, what they are seeking, right? You've had a train of European leaders, not just Volodymyr Zelensky. You had Emmanuel Macron on Monday. You had Keir Starmer on Thursday. And they are seeking a U.S. backstop to any future peace deal that might come to the fore between Russia and Ukraine. Keir Starmer has been on the record as saying they are prepared. The UK is to put boots on the ground, but they too seek that U.S. backstop. Greater clarity will be attained once those leaders meet on Thursday in Brussels, right? We understand the focus will be on Ukraine and EU defense. And the real question becomes, does the Zelensky-Trump relationship get repaired here? Are there going to be some backroom maneuverings? Will there be some apologies? Given the fact that this is a very transactional U.S. president, he is easily offended, despite, at times people could argue him being the offensive one in the room. He gets very offended. And so how do you recalibrate that relationship if that is in fact possible? Lindsey Graham says it's time for Volodymyr Zelensky to go and maybe a replacement to come into the fore. That seems unlikely in the short term. So the question then becomes, if the United States is going to withdraw military support and other support writ large, does the EU and Europe largely have the capacity to step in terms of its military-industrial complex and in terms of the money required here? Russia is struggling now in terms of having been engaged in a war for 3 years. Its economy is not doing as well as it might have been doing at the beginning of this conflict. Does the EU's economic clout, $20 trillion economy versus a $2 trillion economy in the Russian Federation, how do those numbers play itself out moving forward? I don't have the answer for you, but we'll be watching closely.
And of course, the broader question is this the end of NATO as we have always come to know it? Sherwin, thank you so much for that. Really do appreciate your insights on this and that coverage. Sherwin Bryce-Pease is our US correspondent joining us there from New York.